My name is Michael Durante, president of Thai National. We are a national installer of technology across the country, and this is Bourbon with the Boss. Cheers. Today,
cheers.
We have with us Chad Rauch. He is the president of CR Dynamics. He is also a master of processes. So what I'd like to do is have Chad kind of take it over here, tell him a little bit about himself and what he's done in the past when it comes to manufacturing and processes, and kind of go through what you've been through in your career, where you've seen companies build processes to make them a little more leaner, a little bit more refreshed. But let's start off kind of just with a little bit about your background and process.
Background goes back early in my career, many days back. Marine, so spent time in the United States Marine Corps, and supply admin, so being built Band-Aids, get things to the front line. So the supply chain, the getting people what they need has been that core philosophy that's been there. And throughout my early days in career, I started off as a production facilitator at this company that was purchased by Honeywell. And they were the leading edge for the Honeywell, and they were developing their own operating system. So when we talk about operating systems and how to make things more efficient, it goes back to the days of Toyota production. So you hear about the lean manufacturing, the drive, eliminate the waste. That's what the Honeywell philosophy was. And so you talk about process improvements, you talk about lean manufacturing. It's all about making things more efficient. And it's not the big gains. That's a misconception. It's not always about, oh, I can make the biggest gains. It's about small daily gains that drive the improvements over the course of time. So you're not driving the big change because that don't happen.
And no one likes it either, right? You do a big change in a corporation.
Well, then you have resistance and you have feedback, and then you go on a whole different tangent. Is how do you talk about the change management? How do you drive that across the team? But the easiest way to implement any type of process change is talking to the people. Who does the job? So if you're working with somebody in a manufacturing cell, for example, asking them what their challenges are. Right. What do they struggle with day in, day out? You're going to have your operators, you're going to have your managers, you're going to have your executives come in. They're going to do the flyby. Right. They're going to look at, what are you guys doing? Oh, you're productive, okay, but they're not going to see the day in and day struggle. So,
well, question for you. So with Honeywell, specifically when you were there, because you had other positions past that.
Yes, correct.
What was your role there? Kind of give me an explanation of kind of what was your role there. How did you affect change? How those incremental changes, daily basis, or even past that? You worked with some other types of manufacturing besides just where Honeywell.
We'll focus on the Honeywell thing. So my role there was called a production facilitator. I'd like to say that is the terminology of you get to have to do all the things a manager does, but we're not going to pay you for the manager. So full scope in the manufacturing realm of all the key performance metrics, safety, quality, delivery, productivity, cost, were everything that was under my span of control. Right. The manager just took all the credit. So we're going to leave that alone for a second. But when you're in a production facilitator role, your main thing is are the processes, are the deliveries being met day in, day out. During my time there, I was focusing on a project. So this project was, how do you improve the throughput in a manufacturing cell? So this has already been refined. It was a cellular manufacturing, so it was U-shaped. So there was 4 different people in a station. When you were talking manufacturing and lean manufacturing, you have standard processes, and we want to try to level load the operations. Does each person have the same amount of work content? Okay. So when everybody's doing stuff. So I do step 1, right?
Right.
Step 1 takes 20 seconds. I'm done with it. I'm going to pass it on to the second person. Is the second person ready to accept my step that I just finished? If they're not, then we have an imbalance.
Kind of a bottleneck.
Then work will pile up. So how do you stop that? Right?
Okay.
Well, the goal was if there's a imbalance, how do you restructure the work content, share it evenly in the processes where you're not increasing people, you're not decreasing people, you're not changing your floor space, but you're just trying to level load the operations.
Now, you're taking that, you're specifically talking about person to person on the line. Can you take that same concept and build it beyond the line?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. Like, when you're talking about a process, what about coming into that assembly line or that group? Because this could span industries, right?
This can span multiple industries, but it's the processes. You have inputs and you have outputs. Okay. So understanding the output, what is the time it takes to make an output? What's your deliverable of that process, right?
Right.
So that is a known time. You can't change that. It's always going to be this. You might have some fluctuations in between, but you want to time that to be matching. So you're moving material along the way. Paperwork, processes, customer information. You want to move along so when you're done doing your process step is in tune so the next person can pick it up without doing a bottleneck. So that's kind of level loading and understanding your whole manufacturing, your whole business process, so everybody has equal amount of work along the way.
Right. So, but that comes to product ordering all the way through to shipping, right?
When you talk about then, if you're expanding it outside of the manufacturing and production operations, then you're looking at your value stream.
Right.
Because now you're taking a customer order coming in. What is the tack time it takes to make the order? Okay, so tack time. So tack time is the time it would take to complete the order.
Right.
Now, so the time it would take would be broken down into your availability.
Okay. So this could be anything from manufacturing to service deliverables when it comes to installation, or even down to the time of, when it comes to people who are providing some type of construction atmosphere, even on the site.
You're gonna, if we're gonna focus onto a construction standpoint, they're gonna have the same type of thing. They have their process. Okay, let's take construction for example. You don't put the roof on till you build the foundation. You know that. So they have to do things in a manner, and they're going to stack all their processes on top. That overall time is going to be the cycle time.
Right.
Each individual process is stacked up as your cycle time. The tack time, which is different than cycle time.
Okay.
Tack time is the amount of availability you have in a day to complete the customer order. So if you have 400 widgets that need to get produced and you have 400 minutes, that would tell you need to average 1 unit per minute to meet the customer's demand.
Gotcha.
But if you're to build 1 unit may take 4 minutes, now you're behind the 8 ball. So now you're 4 times greater in a lead time to what the customer is expecting.
So what you're saying is building those metrics and understanding those metrics helps you be successful all the way from the start of the sale to delivery.
Yeah, it's understanding capacity.
Right.
What is the capacity? You don't want to oversell and underpromise.
So in these different areas and companies that you've gone through and helped fix their processes, what did you find? Was there any glaring piece that everyone was missing, or are there certain individual ones? Like when you walk in and say something's wrong, what do you look at first, and what have you found? As specific as you can be. I know you can't talk necessarily specific companies, but what have you found when it comes to processes? If I'm a business owner and say, listen, something's not right with my processes, where should I look first?
Understanding your capabilities is the first thing. I've seen a lot of places and industries that falsely represented what they can do. Why?
So setting the proper expectations.
They're focused on the sale.
Yeah.
They're customer chasing in that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If you're young in a business, young in an industry, you're going to focus heavy on customer satisfaction and customer support. By doing that, you're going to drive a lot of different.
As a business owner, what would be a good place to start if I'm saying my processes aren't working well, or I think I might have a process? Where do you find the biggest glaring hole when it comes to companies?
When we talk about that, the experience has always been around what is the actual ability of the plant, of your business. What is the capacity that you have to take a sale and deliver it to your customer?
Okay.
A lot of those processes are falsely advertised or falsely representative, and not in a bad way. It's not false. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not malicious in intent. It's just the expectations of what senior management or sales has versus what the plant can actually do.
Right.
And it could either be, now, when you have that, then there's a lot of activities you can do in those process steps. Example, are you running the equipment at 100%?
Mm-hmm.
Are you running it less than 100%? If you're running it less than 100%, then that capacity that you might have sold expecting is going to be false because you're not running your equipment as such.
If I can back up a second, so expectations of sales or understanding sales. Like, let's say I have 7 salespeople out there, and they say, "Listen, Mr. Customer, sign this contract. We can have this done in 4 weeks, right?" And I've experienced this myself, right? Where it's, yes, the salesperson can say it'd be 4 weeks as normally it would be, but you might already have things in queue. So, when you're saying understanding your limitations, are you talking about building in what's in queue, or are you talking about more than that?
So, both. Okay. It involves both. I mean, there's 2 parts of it. It's the actual process time that it takes to release it to the floor in the manufacturing environment, giving it to a creative team if you're talking design work or something kind of in that realm. But that's only one portion of it, because if you're quoting something because it takes X time and you say, hey, that's the time it's going to take. Well, if you're not understanding all those steps and there's variables, we'll use the machine example, that if they're not running at 100%, it's naturally going to take longer than expected because you're not running it at full machine capacity. That's one portion. The other portion is okay, if I already have a backlog,
right,
that has to come in. I still have to process that before I can take this new order. So if you have a 4-week backlog and you get a new order, I need to process the 4 weeks first,
right,
before I can even start yours. So your earliest start date would be on the 5th week.
So, in your experience, how do you identify the sales when that start point is? What have you seen where it hasn't worked and you've created a fix there? How can companies come in and say, listen, yes, this will take 4 weeks to do, or 5, 4 weeks, great example. This will take 4 weeks to do from our start point. How are the salespeople supposed to know when that start point's going to be? What's a way to do that?
I've seen in the past, and it's worked very well, is there's the SIOP planning. So sales and inventory and operational planning. So you're kind of setting up what is the sales funnel. So what is the projected sales? Because not every sale starts when you've talked to a customer, they're going to sign on dotted line right away.
Well, if the world worked the way we want it to.
For a salesperson, that would work great. But in reality, you have multiple phone calls. You have let me talk to you. Let me get you introductory. Let me give you some rough numbers. Hey, let's tighten things up.
Yeah.
And by the time you have a probability scale built into that, if you don't take into that, some people are just fishing for quotes. Right. Some people that are really serious, you can't really predict what your planning future is going to be.
Yeah.
So you have to take that. Plus, you also configure what is the hard sale. What do you already have in your books? Those are typically done on a month-to-month, quarterly type basis to have those type of planning. So you can feedback should be going to the sales team to say, hey, based on this planning, based on our current backlog, our sold solid backlog, plus production capabilities. But the other factor is now inventory.
Right.
If you sell everything you have, your supplier base may not have the ability to maintain your output. Right. So you have to take that into account. That's been known. Think of the COVID timeframe. You have electronic components. I remember the stories of all the Ford Broncos sitting off in the parking lots because they didn't have the chip to install it.
Chips, yeah.
So these were things that manufacturing plants did to say, I'm going to build it to a certain point, but I'm going to sit on it. Now there's a risk from that manufacturer to take on that. You want to mitigate those risks by providing better, accurate information.
So how often, and I'm assuming this is management team from both production or operations to sales, how often should they be discussing this? Is that a daily thing? Is that a weekly thing? Is that a monthly thing? What have you seen in the field that works the best when it comes to like operations coming and saying legitimately we can handle X, Y, and Z?
I think it's going to vary on the industry.
Okay.
I would say a basis starting point would be on a monthly call.
Okay.
Getting the key players involved. That's going to allow a lot of actions to take place. If you're doing it too frequently, a supplier is not going to provide updates daily.
Right.
They're going to struggle just like your team is struggling on getting things into the plant, getting things out of the plant. So you don't want to overburden them because too much noise can be unnecessary.
Right.
So having that on a monthly basis as a starting point should be a starting factor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that could be also too great depending on industry. So you might want to expand it to a quarterly. Anything less than that, now you're breaking in what I call your strategic planning versus your tactical planning.
Okay.
Strategic is going to be your more long-term plans.
Right.
Tactical is going to be more your day-to-day, week-to-week, maybe month-to-month type plan. So if you want to have an understanding of how the plant is performing, well, that's a daily meeting. What were the results from yesterday? Were you on track to meet your metrics? If you're not, what are your corrective actions to get you back on?
And I assume, so when it comes down to that, your dailies are going to be in the smaller groups, right? And then your weekly tacticals will probably be more in the management groups, monthly more in the executive level. Right?
Now you're branching more into a tier meeting philosophy. I've seen it work in both ways, and it also depends on the industry. I've seen a tier meeting structure that is on a daily basis that gets starting off with your leads to a supervisor to a manager, all the managers talking to the senior manager, and then you have all the senior managers talking to corporate.
Right.
So it depends on the industry and the scale, but what you want to do is cover your goals, your metrics for the day. And at different layers of that tier process, they're going to have different metrics that they focus.
Right.
Let's go back to the operator level. Your operator level, your tier 1 is going to be, what was your sales performance? Okay. Did you make your manufacturing goal yesterday?
Okay, so your KPIs.
Your
for
KPIs.
that.
And they're going to be focusing it on a smaller scale. Now you take it up a level and you're going to talk maybe department level.
Right.
So you're going to have all your cell leads talking about at the high level department. Okay, so the department meet their goals.
So when you talk about that, sorry to break you off there, but when you talk about that, when you talk about being basically a master of processes, right? To build those KPIs, to build those goals, to build those things, a lot of communication has happened back and forth, right?
Yes.
To work on that. But somebody watching today and understanding, saying like, listen, I need to see if my processes are ready, or if they're working, if they're not working, or where the problems are. You walk into a customer, a new customer, Sierra Genetics, hired on to say, take a look at these processes. What's the first thing you do? What's the first? What's the second? What's the third?
Standard work.
Okay.
Standard work. What are you doing? So the standard work is focused around to be repeatable results.
Okay. Is that like a baseline, like what they're doing now, or what? Explain that a little deeper.
Standard work's going to be your baseline. We'll use the term baseline. Is how long does it take me to do something? Okay. It might be from a manufacturing shop. Standard work is I might build the widget this way, and then I might build it this way. But in the end result, I have a widget.
Right.
I might put the cover on first. Tomorrow I might put the cover on last. But either way, the end result is a widget. Well, that's not standard because it's not repeatable. It's not consistent.
Right.
So as long as a plant or a process has standard operating procedures, think of it as your work instructions. Think of it as that's the first starting point. That is making sure everybody that comes in is going to be repeatable. Goes back to the conversation we talked about is your tack time and your cycle time. If your lead time increases or the time frame increases, are everybody doing it the right way every time?
So now for manufacturing, that makes sense. What about the kind of service industry? Do you think those standard operating procedures would still hold fact? Or like how, when there's so many, if there's so many different things that come at you at once, what does it still make sense to have a standard operating procedure, or does it make sense?
How would you train somebody? You have a new person coming in on board.
Right.
How are you going to train them?
That's a good question, because a lot of people that I've seen out there have trained people by just giving them to the best person who does their job.
Now that's
shadow this person.
Shadow that person. But what is that person showing?
Right.
What is the reference materials when that shadow leaves and that person is sitting there? Everybody's been new to something, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're nervous that first day you're by yourself. We all took a driving test and we sat there. We had our hands on 10 and 2, put our seatbelt in, and we're ready to go, right? That guy.
You don't drive on 10 and 2 now?
Oh, of course I do. You know, but you're nervous, right?
Yeah.
But when you get comfortable and you're showing somebody else, are you going to show them that? No, but everybody that's taking you driver instructing school has always said, this is 10 and 2. You're going to hit your turn signals. You're going to look both ways before you go, right? Now, in practical application, you're driving to work. How many people do you see doing that?
Right.
You know,
So
what I'm saying about the standard work in the training material is you have that as a reference point.
Mhm.
So when the shadow leaves, they always have the same material, so they're going to do the same job. And that allows you as a business, as an owner, to replace, I'm not using the word replace, that sounds bad, but it allows people to, that knowledgeable employee allows them to grow. They're not always...
So everyone's trained consistently, but they can still make it their own.
Exactly. So you're, you know, especially in the service industry,
Okay.
you know, if you're in a manufacturing environment, you don't want somebody to make it on their own. If they make it on their own, well, that gets into continuous improvement. That's changing your process.
So let's say, so obviously documenting that, step one.
Mhm.
This is how you're doing it today. Let's document it. Let's make sure everyone's doing the same thing, right? How do you, from that point, improve it? Who do you talk to? What do you
Before
move
we get to the improvement standpoint, now you have everybody that has their process.
Yeah.
But accountability. How do I know you're doing it? I gave you this wonderful manual.
Mhm.
How do I hold you accountable to making sure that's done? So now you have a thing called leadership standard work. So your standard work is your SOPs on how to do the jobs.
Yeah.
Your leaders in your organization have their own things that follow on. Remember, as a leader, I should be managing. I should be making sure everybody's doing their things and forward thinking. As the employer, the worker, I'm doing my job on a consistent basis. So you have to have another layer is double checking that work. And so when you have a leadership standard work, the higher you go up in the organization, every leader's things that they check on a daily, weekly, monthly basis will change. The CEO is going to be checking things a lot differently than a production supervisor.
Right.
But if you have a great organization that is in alignment and has synergy, everything will flow up to what the CEO has, and everything should flow back down to that worker.
So let's build an example there a little bit so I understand it. If a production line, let's say your leadership layer one is going to be checking to make sure things are happening the right way. But the layer above them might be checking that, but checking with a different metric, such as how many failed parts do we have? What's not passing QA? Is that what you mean when you say things are being checked differently?
Yes, you're going to have your supervisors checking at a individual work center level. Okay, is this work center producing what they need to produce?
Right.
All those get rolled up into a department.
Right.
So the next layer is going to be looking at department level metrics.
Okay.
And from there, then you're going to be looking at plant level metrics.
Yeah.
Okay, then you're going to go up higher, and you're going to be looking at division level. And then you're going to be finally looking at a corporate level in a basic example.
Gotcha. So when you come into a place, you say, okay, SLPs, do we have them documented? Do we have them set? Then you say, what do you call this? It's do your leadership have a way to check?
Your leadership standard work, yes.
Leadership standard work. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So leadership standard work. What's next?
That's your foundation.
Right.
That's your foundation.
This is how it's working today. Here's my foundation.
So now we want to look at, okay, what are the opportunities to improve? So you have your foundation, right? So you're measuring that on a daily basis. Okay?
You use those numbers then?
You use those numbers to identify your problems. Okay. So going back to your standard work from an operator, your SOPs, you're going to do your time studies. Now, mind you, this is a manufacturing environment, but a time study can be done in the service industry. How long does it take you to enter a work order ticket for a technician to go out?
Right.
If you have a time value associated with that. What's the average time it takes to enter that?
Well, what's the cost? You need to
And
know
then
what your internal cost is.
we're not even talking cost yet, because that's a whole different factor. We're just talking straight times and improvements.
Right.
But if a person comes in and you say, as an owner, I'm going to say it's going to take 5 minutes to enter a service ticket, but your average ticket entry time from start to finish is 10 minutes, do you think you have a problem?
Mm.
You're going to look at it. You're going to say, wait a second. I'm paying now. Let's bring the cost factor into it. I costed my business to say every time I get a phone call, I'm going to pay 5 minutes for somebody to do this job.
Right.
But now they're taking 100% more time, doubling it.
Right.
I just lost all that time, and time is money. What's going on? So that's when you get to your continuous improvement. That's when you start the investigation. You can do root cause analysis.
Yeah.
So now you're getting into another tool that's going to dig into why something is not making the 5 minutes. Now that could be, I mean to interrupt, could be a lot of different factors. Is it maybe the person wasn't trained properly?
Okay.
Maybe you had a false assumption in your times. Maybe
I was going to bring that up because I'll tell you, there's been a lot of times in my career that I saw, hey, this should only take an hour. It's like, why is it taking 3? It's consistently taking 3.
So now, but if you don't have that time value and you're not using your standard work, your leadership standard work to validate the outputs, you have no checks and balances in your system.
So you mentioned earlier that the people to talk to were the people doing the work. Is those interviewing process or those talking process, are they more open with a consultant or with their direct manager? Like what's the best way to do it? I know people have tried to also do like surveys. Hey, this is a anonymous survey.
Anonymous?
That one.
Yeah, not unanimous?
Unanimous?
I don't know. Anonymous. I think is the word you know.
Anonymous. That's what
Anon. There's just Anon.
Anon. Yeah. It's not the bourbon.
It's definitely not the bourbon. Not on a bourbon talk with the boss.
It's not. Certainly not. So, anonymous survey. So, what's the best route to get that information out of the people doing the work to say, there is something wrong here, but I haven't raised my hand, so I don't want to cause for this.
Observations. How do you put it like this? You ever been hunting, or if you ever been out in the wilderness, how do you observe nature? You don't come down screaming, hey, I want to see this bird fly, yay, bird, and you're not going to see nothing, right?
Yeah, unless you're pheasant hunting, then you got to yell and bushes.
But that's a bad example in that case. But the point I'm trying to come across is that watching somebody do something,
right,
taking your notes, okay, you're going to come across a lot of different things that are going to not be standard, okay? Sometimes it can be, I'm reaching for this too far. I didn't account for the reach. Oh, maybe it's something that says, hey, I got 5 parts in here, but then I'm got to take that and I got to go way over there and I got to put my more parts on there. Well, that's time lost. It could be the same thing. Like, you know what? I forgot to get paper for my printer, so I got to go get paper in a service in an office standpoint. So all these factors come in, but sitting and observing first is the first step. Yeah. Then you're going to ask the questions. Hey, I noticed you did that, but what value do you have?
Right.
What do you, if you don't come up to and have a conversation about something that's seen, everyone's like, yeah, this is the way I do it, but you don't have any validation points to talk about.
I've seen that in my career where people are entering data in multiple areas, and it's something where it's costing the company, it might be costing the company 3 minutes per ticket, or 3 minutes per item. Add that up through the year, and it costs a lot more to do that than to have a developer just make it automatically happen. And your ROI could be as easy as 2 months on that.
And that's going back to observing and asking those questions. So these process improvements are not focused on manufacturing. Everybody comes up, Toyota, the whole lean manufacturing is based off the Toyota production system, which goes back many, many decades and many, many years. And a lot of people that talk about it, a lot more smart people that understand a lot more than I do. But from a layman's term standpoint is, how can I be more efficient?
Yeah.
If I got to enter, here's your example, the same customer name in 4 different fields on 4 different tabs of a ticket, why? Why can't I just enter it once and it can look itself up and just populate everywhere across? There's things when we talk about manufacturing, what's value added and non-value added.
Right.
The non-value in this scenario is multiple times a name is entered.
Right.
The value is I just need to know who my contact is one time. Why is that not the focal point? Enter it one time and not worry about it any else. Then you get into the details. So there's a lot of things that can go on to it, but summing back up, you say, how do you make process improvements, right? It's understanding what people do as your standard work. Mm-hmm. Then you have the people that validate it, which is leadership standard work. And once you have all those, if you have deviations from your established times, then you got to look into a root cause. What's that root cause going to get you? That's going to be your discovery. Then once you have your discovery, like the aha moment, I got to enter your example, name 5 times, it's adding 3 extra minutes to my ticket process. Right. Well, then how do you make those improvements? What are the action items that you can come across to eliminate the problem? In your case, the problem is entering your name multiple times. Might be working with the developer. Okay. Once you have your solution, then you got to test it. Then you implement it. All right, it looks like it's great. Well, then you validate those results. Do I get extra tickets coming out that maybe the name's missing on these other forms, and so page 2 gets lost and like, who's this really belong to? Well, then you go back and you go back to the developer. Hey, it didn't populate correctly. You missed something. But that's the checks and balances, and continuous improvement's ongoing.
Right. Well, and everyone will say, I don't have time for it. I was too busy.
And that's going to be the common misperception.
It takes me 2 seconds to copy and paste that.
It does. But
so how do you? That has to come from top down. They need to be willing to listen, right? Or is there how do you affect those changes?
It's building a rapport with your client in this case, with your subordinates. Like, what's more valuable to you? Where do you see it? It's describing the problem that makes it relate to them. Right. How do you get across to somebody to say you're causing more, you're doing more than what you need to? Mm-hmm. And everybody, human nature says, I want to do the easiest thing, right? I think we're at that point. We have grown to the society aspect that I want it to be easier for me. Right. Back in the day, there wasn't a remote. We had to get up and change the tent.
Or send the kid to do it.
Well, but still, we evolved and said, hey, we taught that child to go change the channel. Now we have a remote for that. Now, because the remote pushing buttons was too hard, now there's a button that you talk into it, and it works for you. But that's all the evolution and the continuous improvement to solving the one problem.
Right.
I'm lazy. I don't want to get up to change the channel. There's a commercial. I don't want to watch commercials. Mm-hmm. So we taught and we developed and we improved. So now we can talk in the wrong mode.
It's all about asking the person on the front line, what's going to make your life easier?
What's going to make my life easier? I'm dad sitting in the chair and I don't want to watch a commercial. Change the channel.
There you go.
Process evolution.
As easy as that. Chad, let everyone know, where can they find you? How can they figure out?
You can find me crdynamics.com. That is cr-dynamics.com. That's the website. Find me on LinkedIn. Chad Rauch. That's my LinkedIn profile. You'll see CR Dynamics on there. But if you need something, process improvements, anything, give me a call.
Yeah, big thank you to our boss today, Chad Rauch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Grant with Time National. Have a great day.
Thank you.